I wanted to speak about Hanukkah and the date and the correlation between this and Christmas, because it's obvious. Every year, Hanukkah and Christmas happen more or less at the same time, and this year, they're literally overlap each other. So you want to know, is it a coincidence or something deeper here? So it seems like the first assumption that one can have is that the early Christians wanted to override Hanukkah. So that's why they set the dates of Christmas to fit exactly Hanukkah. This way, they created a competition that every year when either they did it for competition or because they were still believers in some things. You know that the early Christians also, there was a sect among them. They were called the 14thers, the Cuatro Decimanios, or something like that believed that Easter, which is Pascha, the equivalent of Pesach, always have to be on the 14th of Nisan. Even as Christians, they would celebrate Easter on the Jewish date, and eventually they were rooted out. But it's probable that the same thing happened with Hanukkah, that some people still believe that they have to celebrate the holiday, but they wanted to give it a different meaning, or that they wanted to pull Jews away from the holiday, so they gave them a substitute. And if that's what they wanted, they, at least in modern time, they could achieve certain success, because you know this dilemma of the Hanukkah bush for families that don't have a strong Jewish identity. It's difficult, but even families with strong Jewish identity have a problem with the holiday. I this past week spoke to two teachers in Hebrew schools in different occasions, who said, "Wow, it's a beautiful holiday, like the decorations and all that." And yeah, they're right in a certain way. You know, the visual aspect of the holiday is beautiful, but when you think of someone who's supposed to educate children in a Jewish school and give them Jewish values, and you think like that, it's a little difficult. And we also another impact that the Christmas has on Judaism in America, on Hanukkah, is that we are celebrating it. Jews are celebrating it in very similarly to the way non-Jews celebrate Christmas. With stickers on the window and decorations, it becomes more superficial than an internal concept that one has to acquire. And finally, when I speak about the Hanukkah guilt, in America it has been transformed into Hanukkah gifts. In the schools, in my daughter's school, they had the mystery menorah. And in other places, they have like my secret Maccabee. They imitate all that. I have one of my friends who's a rabbi, actually told me that he grew up in Europe, so even with stronger influence, he would wrap for his children, 8 gifts. For each one of his children, 8 gifts, and they were all on the shelf for each day of Hanukkah. And I'm not in favor of that. I would give gifts to my kids on Hanukkah, but randomly, not necessarily when we light the menorah a little before, not in a way that you have just because it's a holiday and you have to be happy. But there is a very strong influence there. So the question really is but we go one layer back before the Christian establishment of the holiday of what is celebrated as Christmas. Between Christmas and New Year is how long? 8 days? Right? Christmas to New Year, 8 days. So people say that it's because of Brit Milah, that he was circumcised on the 8th day. But in reality, nobody really knows when he was born. Until today, it's celebrated at least 3 different dates around the world. The Greek Orthodox, the Armenian, and the Catholic Church. Each one has a different date for it. And I know that because my father used to work with the Israeli army in intelligence, and he was stationed in Bethlehem, where the Church of the Nativity is located. So on Christmas, there were always celebrations there, and he always had to be there as a representative of the army and intelligence, because he knew all the dignitaries and knew who should be frisked and should not be, and not to prevent any diplomatic problems. So we used to joke. He used to tell me, "I'm the only Orthodox Jew who celebrates or who at least marks Christmas 3 times every year, like more, than anyone. So nobody really knew when he was born and why would you, of course, remember the Brit Milah. Rather, there are 8 days, like I said, that they were trying to get probably override Hanukkah. But if you go even earlier to the time of our Hanukkah, which is about 160 years before the Common Era, and ask what exactly happened there, we find the following. There's a Megillah called Megillah Ta'anit, which lists all the important dates in the Jewish calendar, and they say this: Be'asrim utlata lemar Heshvan, istatar surayga min azarta. It says on the 23rd of Heshvan, which is a month before Hanukkah, the fence that the Greeks built in the temple was demolished, meaning that we already have evidence that the Maccabees entered the Echal a month before the date that we have. And why did they have to do that? מפני שבנו יוונים מקום בעזרה והיו מעמידים בתוכו את הזונות וכשתקפה יד בית חשמונאי נטלו מהן. What the Greeks did when they entered Bet HaMikdash, and that's really the concept of defiling the temple. It's not about touching the oil, but rather the pagan ritual that they celebrated there, and one of them was what was called sacred prostitution. The women were in the temple offering their services to those who came to worship in the temple. So they destroyed it on the 23rd of Heshvan, a month and 2 days before Hanukkah. But it also says in the book of Maccabees that when they got into the Echal, vaytaharu et hamikdash, vayotziu et avnei hashikutz, that once they got into the Echal, they had to purify it, to clear it, to destroy the altar that was defiled and build a new one. And this probably was not. They could not have done it within a short time. It took a long time. It could be that they entered on the 23rd of Heshvan, but did not clear everything until the 25th of Kislev. But in Menachot, in the Gemara, they said that the moment they came in, they took their spears. Their spears had a receptacle at the end because it was the kind of that the head of the arrow sits, or the head of the spear sits in a receptacle, and they turned it into a menorah. They filled it with oil and they lit it right away. So the question is, it could be that the official inauguration of the temple happened on the 25th of Kislev because it took them a while to get there, to get to this point where it's ready for inauguration, but they already lit the candles when they came in. So the commemoration of the holiday only came a year later, when the decision, where are we? I mean, first they just came in and did everything, and a year later, like Gemara says, L'shana heret keva'um, a year later, they reflected on it and they said, okay, so when are we going to, which would be the official date of Hanukkah? Entering the temple or inaugurating the temple? So they chose not the day when they entered the temple, but rather the day when they finished all the cleaning and reconstruction, and then they did the official inauguration of the temple. And that was on the 25th of Kislev. And the question is, when we get to that, was it a coincidence, meaning they just finished, they happened to finish on that day, or they chose that day to finish on and to celebrate for 8 days? And why is it 8 days? There are a million different answers to the question that if the commemoration is the miracle of the jar of oil, which lasted for 8 days, should it be only 7 days because there was enough oil for 1 day? And there are a million answers. When you have so many answers, you know that none of them is probably accurate. So I think the answer is found in Masechet Avodah Zarah. This is the tractate in the Talmud that deals with idolatry. It's always interesting when you ask someone who's in the yeshiva, says, "What are you learning now?" He says, "I'm studying Avodah Zarah." It's like, "I'm studying idolatry." That's okay. That's interesting. So the Gemara says the following. It speaks about the Mishnah, about the holidays that we are not supposed to, not only not to celebrate, but also during those holidays, you're not supposed to have negotiation with the pagans, because in a way you support paganism. So this is Ve'elu edehen shel ovdei kochavim Calanda. The first holiday that they mention is called Calanda, from the word that we know, calendar. So it's something that has to do with the calendar. What is this day? They say this. לפי שראה, they say this, אמר רב חנן ברבה, קלנדה 8 ימים אחר תקופה. The calendar holiday is 8 days before the tkufa. The tkufa is what we call the solstice, the solstice, the equinox, when you have the day and night, right? For example, you have the shortest day, and then the day starts turning longer again, and that's around that time. It's you always okay. So today, first day of winter, right? So what happened? The Tanu Rabbanan, לפי שראה האדם הראשון יום שמתמעט והולך, אמר, אוי לי, שמה בשביל שסרחתי עולם חשוך בעדי, וחוזר לתוהו ובוהו, וזוהי מיתה שנכנסה עליי מן השמיים. עמד וישב 8 ימים בתענית ובתפילה. says, האדם הראשון sinned, he was driven away from Gan Eden, and then when he observes nature around him, he sees that every day is a little shorter than the previous day. Now, if that's all the scientific data that you have, and you extrapolate, then you come to the conclusion that this process is going to go on and on and on, and at a certain point, there will be no day, right? It's the first year, it's the first time you see it. So he became very concerned, and when the tkufa came, and when the days were almost exactly the same length as the night, when they became shortest, he started fasting. He was fasting and he was crying, praying to God to forgive him. כיוון שראה תקופת טבת וראה יום שמאריך והולך, אמר מנהגו של עולם הוא. But once the days became longer, he says, that's the natural order, and he calmed down. לשנה אחרת, עשאן 8 ימים טובים. On the following year, he made it into a holiday. So this is interesting, that, of course, not to be taken literally. Adam HaRishon didn't do that. This is a midrash. But what the Talmud tells us, that this is what we call a myth, or mythology. People looked at natural phenomena and they didn't know how to explain them, and they gave them a certain explanation, and that affected their religious rituals. So Adam HaRishon, or in that case all of humanity, celebrated the change of seasons. I mean, even today in America, right? You have a Groundhog Day. You have there are cities in Europe where they build a snowman and wait for it to melt to predict the weather, or they send the goat away somewhere in Switzerland. Each one has his own celebrations, because we give some kind of supernatural power to the natural phenomena. It's a form of paganism. So we know that before Hanukkah there was a pagan holiday in the Middle East, definitely in Eretz Israel, where they celebrated the change of season from the shortest day to days that become longer. It's very probable that the Maccabim, when they timed the inauguration of the temple for Kafeh Bekislev, they timed it so it will override this pagan holiday. This way they will be able to abolish it and have people celebrate a holiday with a religious meaning. And then later on, when the Christians decided to create Christmas and New Year's, whatever, Christmas for 8 days, they either wanted to override the Jewish practice, or it's very probable that they wanted to override the pagan practice, which was still common. So that's just it seems that all the factors align together to show that this is the time, and that's why it's based on the solar year. It's a solar cycle, and that's why it still is aligned with the Christian holidays. But it doesn't take anything from the greatest of Hanukkah. As I wrote yesterday, this is the meaning and the message of Hanukkah keeps intensifying with each year, because we have our cumulative experience, and that what builds up for the next year. Let's go.